The Arnolfini Portrait is an oil painting on oak panel dated 1434 by the early Netherlandish painter Jan van Eyck. It is also known as the Arnolfini Wedding, the Arnolfini Marriage, the Arnolfini Double Portrait, or the Portrait of Giovanni Arnolfini and his wife, among other titles. The painting is a small full-length double portrait, which is believed to represent the Italian merchant Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini and possibly his wife, presumably in their home in the Flemish city of Bruges. It is considered one of the more original and complex paintings in Western art because of the iconography, the unusual geometric orthogonal perspective, the use of the mirror to reflect the space, and that the portrait is considered unique by some art historians as the record of a marriage contract in the form of a painting. According to Ernst Gombrich, in its own way it was as new and revolutionary as Donatello's or Masaccio's work in Italy. A simple corner of the real world had suddenly been fixed onto a panel as if by magic. For the first time in history, the artist became the perfect eyewitness in the truest sense of the term. Signed and dated by Van Eyck in 1434, it is, with the Ghent altarpiece by the same artist and his brother Hubert, the oldest very famous panel painting to have been executed in oils rather than in tempera. The painting was bought by the National Gallery in London in 1842. Van Eyck used the technique of applying layer after layer of thin translucent glazes to create her painting with an intensity of both tone and color. The glowing colors also helped to highlight the realism, and to show the material wealth and opulence of Arnolfini's world. Van Eyck took advantage of the longer drying time of oil paint, compared to tempera, to blend colors by painting wet in wet to achieve subtle variations in light and shade to heighten the illusion of three-dimensional forms. The medium of oil paint also permitted Van Eyck to capture surface appearance and distinguish textures precisely. He also rendered the effects of both direct and diffuse light by showing the light from the window on the left reflected by various surfaces. It has been suggested that he used a magnifying glass in order to paint the minute details such as the individual highlights on each of the amber beads hanging beside the mirror. The illusionism of the painting was remarkable for its time, in part for the rendering of detail, but particularly for the use of light to evoke space in an interior, for its utterly convincing depiction of a room, as well as the people who inhabit it. Whatever meaning is given to the scene and its details, and there has been much debate on this. According to Craig Harbison, the painting is the only 15th-century northern panel to survive in which the artist's contemporaries are shown, engaged in some sort of action in a contemporary interior. It is indeed tempting to call this the first genre painting, a painting of everyday life, of modern times. Description: the painting is generally in very good condition, though with small losses of original paint and damages, which have mostly been retouched. Infrared reflectograms of the painting show many small alterations, or pentimenta, in the underdrawing, to both faces, to the mirror, and to other elements. The couple are shown in an upstairs room with a chest and a bed in it during early summer as indicated by the fruit on the cherry tree outside the window. The room probably functioned as a reception room, as it was the fashion in France and Burgundy where beds in reception rooms were used as seating, except, for example, when a mother with a new baby received visitors. The window has 6 interior wooden shutters, but only the top opening has glass, with clear bull's-eye pieces set in blue, red and green stained glass. The two figures are very richly dressed. Despite the season, both their outer garments, his tabard and her dress, are trimmed and fully lined with fur. The furs may be the especially expensive sable for him and ermine or minever for her. He wears a hat of plaited straw dyed black, as often worn in the summer at the time. His tabard was more purple than it appears now and may be intended to be silk velvet. Underneath he wears a doublet of patterned material, probably silk damask. Her dress has elaborate dagging on the sleeves, and a long train. Her blue underdress is also trimmed with white fur, although the woman's plain gold necklace and the rings that both wear are the only jewelry visible. Both outfits would have been enormously expensive, and appreciated as such by a contemporary viewer. There may be an element of restraint in their clothes befitting their merchant status. Portraits of aristocrats tend to show gold chains and more decorated cloth, although the restrained colors of the man's clothing correspond to those favored by Duke Philip of Burgundy. The interior of the room has other signs of wealth. The brass chandelier is large and elaborate by contemporary standards, and would have been very expensive. It would probably have had a mechanism with pulley and chains above, to lower it for managing the candles. The convex mirror at the back, in a wooden frame with scenes of the Passion painted behind glass, is shown larger than such mirrors could actually be made at this date, another discreet departure from realism by Van Eyck. There is also no sign of a fireplace, nor anywhere obvious to put one. Even the oranges casually placed to the left are a sign of wealth. They were very expensive in Burgundy, and may have been one of the items dealt in by Arnolfini. Further signs of luxury are the elaborate bed hangings and the carvings on the chair and bench against the back wall. Also the small oriental carpet on the floor by the bed. Many owners of such expensive objects placed them on tables, as they still do in the Netherlands. The view in the mirror shows two figures just inside the door that the couple are facing. The second figure, wearing red, is presumably the artist, although, unlike Velázquez in Las Meninas, he does not seem to be painting. Scholars have made this assumption, based on the appearance of figures wearing red headdresses in some other Van Eyck works and the figure in the background of the Madonna with Chancellor Ralin. The dog is an early form of the breed now known as the Brussels Griffon. The painting is signed, inscribed and dated on the wall above the mirror. Johannes de Eyck Fuert Hague 1434. The inscription looks as if it were painted in large letters on the wall, as was done with proverbs and other phrases at this period. Other surviving Van Eyck signatures are painted in trompe-l'oeil on the wooden frame of his paintings, so that they appear to have been carved in the wood. Identity of subjects. In their book published in 1857, Crowe and Cavalcastle were the first to link the double portraits with the early 16th century inventories of Margaret of Austria. They suggested that the painting showed portraits of Giovanni D'Arrigo Arnolfini and his wife. 4 years later James Wheel published a book in which he agreed with this analysis and identified Giovanni's wife as Jean van Eyck. For the next century most art historians accepted that the painting was a double portrait of Giovanni D'Arrigo Arnolfini and his wife Jean van Eyck. But a chance discovery in 1997 established that they were married in 1447. 13 years after the date on the painting and 6 years after Van Eyck's death. It is now believed that the subject is either Giovanni D'Arrigo or his cousin, Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini, and an unknown wife of either one of them. This is either an undocumented first wife of Giovanni D'Arrigo or a second wife of Giovanni di Niccolao, or, according to a recent proposal, Giovanni di Niccolao's first wife Costanza Trenta, who had died by February 1433. In the latter case, this would make the painting partly an unusual memorial portrait, showing one living and one dead person. Both Giovanni D'Arrigo and Giovanni di Niccolao Arnolfini were Italian merchants, originally from Lucca, but resident in Bruges since at least 1419. The man in this painting is the subject of a further portrait by Van Eyck in the Gemäldegalerie, Berlin, leading to speculation he was a friend of the artist. Scholarly debate. In 1934 Erwin Panofsky published an article entitled Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini Portrait in the Burlington magazine, arguing that the elaborate signature on the back wall, and other factors, showed that it was painted as a legal record of the occasion of the marriage of the couple, complete with witnesses and a witness signature. Panofsky also argues that the many details of domestic items in the painting each have a disguised symbolism attached to their appearance, while Panofsky's claim that the painting formed a kind of certificate of marriage is not accepted by all art historians. His analysis of the symbolic function of the details is broadly agreed, and has been applied to many other early Netherlandish paintings, especially a number of depictions of the Annunciation set in richly detailed interiors, a tradition for which the Arnolfini Portrait and the Marriage altarpiece by Robert Campin represent the start. Since then, there has been considerable scholarly argument among art historians on the occasion represented. Edwin Hall considers that the painting depicts a betrothal, not a marriage. Margaret D. Carroll argues that the painting is a portrait of a married couple that alludes also to the husband's grant of legal authority to his wife. Carroll also proposes that the portrait was meant to affirm Giovanni Arnolfini's good character as a merchant and aspiring member of the Burgundian court. She argues that the painting depicts a couple, already married, now formalizing a subsequent legal arrangement, a mandate, by which the husband hands over to his wife the legal authority to conduct business on her own or his behalf. The claim is not that the painting had any legal force, but that Van Eyck played upon the imagery of legal contract as a pictorial conceit. While the two figures in the mirror could be thought of as witnesses to the oath-taking, the artist himself provides authentication with his notarial signature on the wall. Jan Baptist Bedorks agrees somewhat with Panofsky that this is a marriage contract portrait in his 1986 article, The Reality of Symbols. The question of disguised symbolism in Jan van Eyck's Arnolfini Portrait. However, he disagrees with Panofsky's idea of items in the portrait having hidden meanings. Bedorks argues, if the symbols are disguised to such an extent that they do not clash with reality as conceived at the time, there will be no means of proving that the painter actually intended such symbolism. He also conjectures that if these disguised symbols were normal parts of the marriage ritual, then one could not say for sure whether the items were part of a disguised symbolism or just social reality. Craig Harbison takes the middle ground between Panofsky and Bedorks in their debate about disguised symbolism and realism. Harbison argues that Jan van Eyck is there as storyteller, who must have been able to understand that, within the context of people's lives, objects could have multiple associations, and that there are many possible purposes for the portrait and ways it can be interpreted. He maintains that this portrait cannot be fully interpreted until scholars accept the notion that objects can have multiple associations. Harbison urges the notion that one needs to conduct a multivalent reading of the painting that includes references to the secular and sexual context of the Burgundian court, as well as religious and sacramental references to marriage. Lorne Campbell in the National Gallery catalogue sees no need to find a special meaning in the painting. There seems little reason to believe that the portrait has any significant narrative content. Only the unnecessary lighted candle and the strange signature provoke speculation. He suggests that the double portrait was very possibly made to commemorate a marriage, but not a legal record, and cites examples of miniatures from manuscripts, showing similarly elaborate inscriptions on walls as a normal form of decoration at the time. Another portrait in the National Gallery by Van Eyck, Portrait of a Man, has a legalistic form of signature. Margaret Costa's new suggestion, discussed above and below, that the portrait is a memorial one, of a wife already dead for a year or so, would displace these theories. Art historian Maximilian Martins has suggested that the painting was meant as a gift for the Arnolfini family in Italy. It had the purpose of showing the prosperity and wealth of the couple depicted. He feels this might explain oddities in the painting. For example, why the couple are standing in typical winter clothing while a cherry tree is in fruit outside, and why the phrase Johannes de Eyck Fuet Hick 1434 is featured so large in the center of the painting. Hermann Kohlenbrander has proposed that the painting may depict an old German custom of a husband promising a gift to his bride on the morning after their wedding night. He has also suggested that the painting may have been a present from the artist to his friend.